All right, so we are back with Dr. Katie and Sarah Duncan, and we are talking because we are friends and we would normally have this phone call just regular, like, hey, how's it going? But we decided to just start recording some of our conversations because they're hilarious and awesome and they're so nourishing and fulfilling for us. So we thought maybe somebody would get something out of it. And today we decided to talk about because you and I like to nerd out on different things, and you and I have nerded out equally on the topics that we're going to be talking about today, but because we specify in this nerdiness through our career. And mine is on somatics and yours is on human design. And it is something that we probably got into as a result of being a client of somebody at some point, and we really liked it a lot. And then we got really into it, and then we became a practitioner of it. So we thought we would just share a little bit about that with people today. Um, but yeah, I want to introduce Sarah because Sarah is a friend of mine, but she is also my human design practitioner. And I used you about 3 or 4 years ago to do an entire family human design, which is probably a lot for you. I want to know what that experience was like at some point in your answer. But like you did my whole family's human design, and then you shared with me like how that would influence my relationship with my partner and my two kids. And I just returned to that like, I don't know how many years later, because I have a manifester as a son, and my son is acting up a lot right now at school. And I remember distinctly you telling me, when he gets to be about 3 or 4, his little manifestor self is going to have a really hard time listening to authority. And I like stored it back in my head because I knew it would come up, and it's coming up now because manifestors don't like to be told what to do. And so I will let you just take it away here in a minute, but I'm so grateful that you warned me about this, and I'm a lot more forgiving of my son because he is going to be one of these people that just makes brand new everything in life, and he needs, as a result of being a manifester, he needs like boundaries, but he needs a lot of freedom because if he doesn't have freedom, then he like, goes a little crazy. And you're the one that taught me that. So I really appreciate that. But yes, Sarah, please share with everybody, including me, what is human design and why is it so awesome?
Mhm. I love that intro, Katie, because you're exactly right. I think both of us, we experience different modalities ourselves, and when it's really impactful to us, we're like, okay, I have to learn how to do that so I can offer it to my clients. And that's definitely what happened with human design for me. I first happened into human design by another person who was guiding me through a big personal shift. I was a new mother and trying to understand my career and how I can be a better entrepreneur and all of that. And she showed me my human design body graph. And so, for those of you that may not know, human design is a system that gives you insight into how your energy moves, how you can best make decisions, and what some of your natural gifts are, as well as how you interact in relationships with other people.
And what's it
And
based off of? It's based off
yeah,
of your
it's
birthday, right?
exactly. So much like you would give your information for, let's say, an astrology reading, you use your birth time, your location, and date, and that gives you a blueprint of yourself, and it's called the Human Design Body Graph. Human design came about um, probably over 3 decades ago now. It's been around for a while, but it's really, really taken uh, a lot of traction lately, especially as people are beginning to question a lot about themselves. And it's really, I think, aiding quite a bit in people's spiritual awakenings, which is really cool.
It's got
But
a weird background too, right? Like not weird, but an interesting background of like how it came to be.
yeah, well, the system itself is a synthesis of other systems. So it uses the Chinese I Ching, it uses Western astrology or tropical astrology, it uses um, the Kabbalah, it uses um, a few different tools like that. And what it basically came through as is this full system, but it was basically downloaded into this person who goes by Ra Uruhu, who's since deceased, but he's the one who basically was the founder of human design. He received the knowledge and then started to share it with the world. And that was no easy feat either. And Katie mentioned earlier, her son is a manifester. Ra was also a manifester, which
Makes
helped him a
sense.
lot and being able to make the impact that he's here for. But Ra went on to not just share the information of human design, but also to explain a few different ways that you can interpret it. For instance, energy types. So there's 5 different energy types in human design. And based on your energy type, it's going to tell you a lot about how you can interact in the world, how you're actually meant to manifest things. So don't get confused that the term manifester means that they manifest everything. Everyone is manifesting things, but we all do it in different ways. And it also helps us understand how we all make decisions. So what it really is a science of differentiation. It's here to help you be yourself, not like everybody else. And throughout our lives, we've taken on a lot of different conditioning, a lot of different programs that say you should act this way, make decisions this way, force your energy this way or that way. And human
Right.
design says, no, 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 no. You are unique. Let's look at how you are meant to make decisions. Let's look at how your energy naturally moves. Let's understand some of your gifts and the energy that you were born with when you came through into planet Earth and began your life here. So,
I remember some of your behavior changed right away after you learned your human design because you were like, so I started sleeping in a different bedroom. I'm like, what? Is everything okay? And, and you're like,
yeah.
yo, this is my human design. So like share a little bit about that because it was like a moment for you of like, this makes perfect sense about what's happening with my partner's energy and my energy when we have to share a space.
Exactly. So human design is it's based in an understanding that we all have an aura. And based on our energetic aura, we are coming into contact with other people. And when we do, our auras blend together and our energies intermingle. And we're
Totally.
actually impacting each other, which anybody who's listening to this has probably felt this before. You
Right.
may feel a certain way with someone and feel another way with another
Like some
person. You
people
may
you
feel totally different in the
amplify.
crowd.
And other
Yeah.
people like they're like bringing you down and you have to like do everything you can not to. Yeah.
Well, I think it's all about awareness. So, what human design does is it really makes you aware of these things because whether we want to or not, we're amplifying each other's energies in
True.
different ways. So, for instance, Katie and I, we both have a defined emotional system, meaning that we have our own internal emotional wave that is constantly churning and burning. And the way that we make our decisions is actually through that emotional system, which means we don't have clarity in the moment. We might have some intuitive knowing, but it's important for us that we sit with that and we wait probably at least a few days, sometimes longer, before we make these big decisions. A perfect
Right.
example of this is Katie talking to you about where you and Blake, your husband, were going to move next.
Yeah.
And you were thinking at the time you lived in Dallas, Texas, and you both knew you wanted to live somewhere else, but you didn't know where yet. And I
Yeah.
remember you talking to me over the next few months and you and Blake were going back and forth. Where should we move? Where should we live? This place, that place, this place, that
Yeah.
place. And I told you, Katie, I said, you don't have clarity yet.
Yeah.
You're waiting on more information. Just sit, stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, and enjoy where you are now.
Yeah.
And
And that really
when the
helped.
clarity
Yeah.
came, it came. And then you knew exactly where to move,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So because you are because you have that defined emotional system, to go back to your point, Katie, whenever you're in contact with someone who doesn't have a defined emotional system, they're amplifying your emotional energy. So your
Yes.
husband, for instance, is a manifesting generator and he's a sacral manifesting generator. He doesn't have a defined emotional system.
Yeah.
So you're amplifying him with your emotional wave. And same thing with your daughter, for
Yep.
instance, your
I
daughter
was gonna say,
Dottie.
and my daughter is the same. Yep. They
Yep.
are
So just
undefined. It's very
you're
obvious
giving
they're undefined. Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned how much your emotional state impacts Dottie because sometimes
Mhm.
the emotional person thinks that other person is so emotional. They are all over the place emotional. And the joke's on us because actually it's our emotional wave that's
Yeah.
there then
And I
amplifying.
remember you telling me too that like because my son has a defined like me. So my son and I are defined, and my daughter and my partner are undefined. And I noticed a huge difference once my son could speak because he will say, Mommy, what's wrong? Because he's defined. And so he knows it's not his, he knows
Mhm.
it's mine. So he can like determine the difference. where my
Yeah.
daughter will just become in a bad mood
Yeah.
and she won't know whose it's from. She doesn't know
Totally.
where it's coming from. And it's like, I'll be like, what's wrong? And she goes, I don't know. And I just have a big feeling. But it's because she's absorbing my energy, whereas I'm defined and so is my son. And we can say that person's feeling like this, you know? So it's like we can see it,
Exactly.
whether it's
Yeah,
coming
you
from
can
us or
tell,
not.
like, well, it's not me. So who is
Mhm.
it? So a lot of times,
Yeah.
people who do have their system emotionally defined, if they're in touch with their emotions, which most children are born with that
Right.
ability, they're gonna, ask you those things, especially defined emotional systems. It's almost like an unspoken language. Like we kind of get each other. When you show
Mhm.
up and you're in your, in the highs and lows of your wave, Katie, I'm just able to see you and greet you,
Mhm.
and we just like click like that,
And
right?
that's
It's
because, so you're a projector, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
so
there's
there's five. Is
different
it
energy
five?
types.
What's the different ones that are
Yeah, so there's
available?
there's projectors such as myself, generators, manifesting generators, manifestors, and reflectors. And these five different energy types don't define you per se because there's a lot of different ways that you can be each of these things, but it does give you a little bit of an idea of how you kind of operate in the world. And
How did you feel when you learned you were a projector? Because how did that define retroactively your life of like, oh my gosh, now I understand why this, and this was always a challenge, and this, and this was what I was good at, like
Well,
when
it
you
was
found
really
out.
affirming for me. Like I felt immediately like recognized, I felt seen by this because, projectors are really designed to work one-on-one with people. They have an aura that's penetrating and focused. And so I can be really intense when I'm staring at a person, when I'm
Yeah,
connecting with a person, I'm like with them. And I've designed my aura locks on to their heart center, to their G center, which is like the center of their being. And I've always cared a lot more about the other person than myself. Like I've always had that focus on the other. And so it made so much sense to me, but also understanding that I have a undefined sacral center, which is my energy center. So it means I don't have this consistent energy and output and work. It was really, really helpful to learn that because my whole life I'd been conditioned to be like a generator. And at work, in my previous roles, I was an amazing generator. Like I worked harder than all the other generators, but I also got sick all the time, and I
yeah,
was bitter, and I was not feeling fulfilled in my work, and I was exhausted. So
totally.
I really took away a lot there and understanding how my energy moves. And um, even one reason why Katie mentioned I decided to sleep in a different
Yeah,
bed as my husband, and he wanted it too, is because of our differences and our energies. He is also a projector, but he has his emotional system undefined, which means that at night he was absorbing all of my emotional wave, and he would wake up and feel in this mood and this funk, and sometimes he couldn't shake it off. And sometimes it feels great to be around an emotional person. There is
totally.
nothing more feeling good to an undefined solar plexus person, an undefined emotional person, than being around an emotional person in a high. Okay, like
That's
when they're
true.
at the high of their wave, they are like ecstasy. Okay, because that undefined person is amplifying their energy at 200%. All right, so they're getting like blasted with this feel good, amazing feeling. But when you're in a low, or maybe even you're in a chaotic point in your emotional processing, it doesn't feel as good potentially. Sometimes the low can just be kind of surprising. Like, why is the energy in this room suddenly so down? Why do I feel like moody now? So it can really change a lot. And when we sleep in separate rooms, it just lets us wake up in our own aura
It's really
feeling
important,
better.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Are
So,
your kids undefined? What are your kids?
so it helps me understand my role as a parent too. And Ra even said, the founder of human design, he said human design is coming through. Yeah, it can help the current generation, but what it's really here for is the children of the next
Interesting.
generation so that they can grow up in correctness to begin with, so that their parents know how to parent them and support them. And I try not to push human design on my kids or tell them this is what you are, because I want them to experience themselves without labels. But it's really obvious to me that this is a thing, okay?
Yeah.
Like my daughter Mira, my firstborn, she's 3 years old and she is an emotional manifesting generator. And
Wow. Yeah.
absolutely, she goes through her emotional waves and it's different from mine. She's very sensitive, just like
Mhm.
your son Jamie is with his emotional system. So she's tuned into me. She can always tell when I've dropped energy wise
She's
or
defined.
when something's wrong. Yeah, and she's defined
Yeah.
emotionally. So then my other daughter is a generator, and she is a textbook generator. When she is ready to sleep, she's a sacral generator, though. Okay. So when she's
Okay.
ready to sleep, she just passes right out. And until she's ready to sleep, she cannot sleep. She cannot sleep at all. Like it's
Right.
really important for her to get all of her energy out. This baby, at the time of this recording, is 10 months old, but she will stay up until 10 p.m. at night
Yeah.
if she still has
She's
energy.
partying. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got
So I
life to
do.
live. That's
We call
generators,
her
right?
our
We
party
love new
girl.
experiences.
Yeah, we call her our party girl. So you asked me what it was like to look at your family's design, and I love looking at relationships designs and human design because it can just really give a lot of understanding to things. So it was really rewarding, especially to, of course, give you that information around Jamie and him being a manifester, especially an emotional manifester,
Totally.
and helping you understand like this boy is here to make an impact. He's here to let out his creativity. He's here to express himself in different
Yeah,
ways. And what everybody wants to do with a manifester is shut them down. They want them to get in
totally.
line, behave, and it's like be a little generator. Okay. And
Yes.
that's what they want to turn him
Because the
into.
generator is what?
Teachers.
It's like a large percentage of the population, right? Like 70% or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. About 70%, just under 70% are generators and manifesting generators. So when a manifester pops up, they're about 10% of the population. They used to be like the kings and queens. They used to be the leaders around the world, and now that's shifted into projectors taking on a new guidance role, a new type of leadership. But the manifestors are still here, and they still are here to make an impact and to live life as themselves, just like anybody else. And there's still a little bit of intimidation that comes with the manifestor aura. It's a big, bold, impactful aura. And so when somebody sees Jamie, an educator that doesn't understand him may want to basically put him in a little box and tell him,
Yeah,
sit in the
that's what's
square,
happening. Yeah.
like you need to behave.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, Jamie is meant to be Jamie. And it doesn't mean that he's not meant to behave. He can still learn the rules and be a
Right.
good kid at school, but he's not meant to be power dominated or anything like that. Like that's
Totally.
not a good
And that's
approach
what's
for
so
him.
fascinating about this manifester reality of watching it unfold as like a little baby and then now a toddler is like this kid was born with charisma. I mean, his
Yeah.
charisma is off the charts. And so when you told me that when he was a baby, like, oh yeah, he's going to have this unbelievable charisma, it's only gotten more and more and more. But now that he's expected to like toe the line and do the things that you do, it's difficult for him. And so I'm recognizing like there might be an alternative path for him in terms of education because he needs to really like move and be creative and be
Yeah.
himself. So we'll see how that goes. But what about when you're in your own family or your own relationship, do you ever like go back to the chart and or like do you memorize it enough? I
Oh
was
my
like,
God,
oh
like
yeah,
all
I
the
see
time.
how this is playing out. Like I know
So
what's happening here.
I'm lucky in that my husband, after some time, got really into human design. Like sometimes he's even more into human design than I am, and I'm really into human design. So it's a pretty much a daily topic in our house. We
I
notice
bet.
things. We notice um, basically our energetic interactions in the house. We notice it with our children. We notice it with each other, and it's helped us in our relationships so much.
Is it a
So
projector quality to get super nerdy and into something and know all of the ins and outs, or is that a different part of the
yeah.
quality? Because I'm a
So
generator and I get like that, then I get bored quickly. Like I'll go in
mhm,
really, really deep, and then I'd be like, "So I know everything there is to know, and then I'll move on. That seems
yeah,
like a
I'm
generator thing of like more new, new, more new, new. But what about it
yeah.
for you?
In a lot of ways, projectors are here to master systems, and human design
Makes
is a
sense.
system. So some projectors master the system of computer programming. Some of them master the system of Reiki. Some of them come in and master the system of whatever type of shaman practice they want to focus in on. Some people do astrology. There's all these different routes, but for me, for whatever reason, human design has stuck around and hypnotherapy has stuck around. But Katie, we also share our profile.
Three,
So
five,
Katie and I are
right?
both 3-5 profiles,
Yep.
right? And that also 3-5s love to have the door open. We like
Yep.
changes. We don't like
Love
to
it.
be boxed in. That's why a long-term corporate job has never been our thing. It's because we need to have total freedom and flexibility, ideally, in our work and in what we're doing. Because that third line that we both share, it loves newness, it loves
Yeah.
exploration, it
Pivoting.
loves creativity, innovation, testing things out. So we love to
I
test and
like that
test.
line because it makes you never fear failure,
Mhm.
right?
Although some 3-5s definitely get into that place of pessimism and fearing failure. But generally, third lines are very resilient, but we can
Mhm.
get beaten down over the course of our lives. So it definitely depends on the person. But I would say that is definitely an outstanding quality in a lot of 3-5s is we're not afraid to just keep innovating. Like
Yeah.
I not the best example, but Elon Musk, for instance, is a 3-5 manifester. And if you look at his design and understanding his 3-5 nature, he's gone out and innovated and tested out so many different things. Not all of it has been successful, but a lot of it has. And the funny thing about a 3-5 is we often figure out what doesn't work and we share that with people. Like, this doesn't work. That
Yeah.
doesn't work.
And
And
that's
then
interesting when
find out what
you're if
works.
you're that way, but then you're high up, like for his example, if you're high up enough, it can fuck with everybody else because you're just playing. Like you're
Oh
just
yeah.
playing around. Like you just want to
Oh,
play and see how it works.
so a 3-5 by nature is a little chaotic too. And
Mhm.
so we are constantly in evolution. When you met us last week, we're already changed,
Yeah.
like we're not the same as we were a few days ago.
And we
And
can
that's
keep
the
up with
nature of
it.
the 3-5.
So we're like, yeah, chaos, chaos, chaos. And then if like somebody else who would be like not a 3-5, like who's like the opposite of that that needs like
So
stable 4-6.
yeah, I mean, 4-6 actually has a lot of third line qualities because of the six. But
Oh, okay.
my husband, for instance, is a 2-4, and that's almost pretty much as opposite as you can go. Um, yeah, I would say any two, any four, there's some potential differences there, but that two line is like the natural. There's no deep trial and error their whole lives unless it's somewhere else in their design. But the profile by nature is just kind of this natural, easy breezy genius that just plugs in and gets it.
Yeah,
You're
you gotta
feeling like
love
you're
these easy
innovating
breezy
and testing
geniuses.
out. And
Okay, so
so
let's say somebody's listening to this and then they're like, hey, I want to do this human design. So I know that you do it in several different ways. If I were a client that wanted to like reach out and have my human design, what would I do if I wanted from you?
yeah, if you want a human design reading, maybe you're newer to the system, you haven't looked at your design too deeply before, then I can offer you a 90-minute human design reading. And if you're already in human design a little bit and you are looking for more guidance in association with your design, with something that's going on in your life, we can have a more fluid guidance session where I'm going to refer to your design, but I'm not going to go in and explain different elements too deeply right off of the bat, unless you have specific questions, in which case I'm happy to dive in deeper. So those are the two ways that I work primarily right now, but I also offer one third option, which is a relationship reading. So if you are finding yourself in that place where you're like, I want to understand the dynamics between me and my partner,
Totally. That
between
helped
me
me a
and my
lot.
child, then I also offer those. And I can look at both of your designs, describe those, and describe what exactly mechanically is happening between your energies. Because, like we said before, it's not something that you can really change because it's
Totally.
your design, but it is something you can be aware of. And the awareness is what brings the insights, the freedom, the respect, the ability to open up that unconditional love for someone, trying not to change them because you see their design, you see the beauty of who they
And
are.
see the complement of it, right? Like sometimes, like I know for me, I'm a reactor and my husband is a proactive person. And it's like we have had so many decisions this year. And I went back over and over and over again to you saying, like, you're always, Katie, you're going to be more improvisational. You're going to react in the moment. But your partner's design is like he needs to think it through and he will like plan from his thoughts going forward. And it's like that is so obvious this. And I really appreciate his way of doing it, because if it was always up to me, I would just be reacting after reacting. And it's like, that's not always healthy in a group. For
Mhm.
me, it's great, but for when it's a unit, we have to complement each other, have a little
Absolutely.
proactivity. Yeah. And
I mean, when
those
you're
those
designed
relationship ones are good. You do those so well.
Thanks. Yeah, when you and your husband are together, for instance, you make up a totally new human design chart. Together, you're an emotional manifesting generator. So you actually need time to process your decisions together. Even
Yeah.
though Blake on his own is a sacral manifesting generator, he could make decisions in the moment and feel that with his gut. When he's with you, we got to wait out your emotional wave. There's no way around it. So,
Good
I
point.
mean, I really love the way that you two work together. I really admire your relationship and how
Mhm.
you make it work and understanding each other's differences and also understanding how
Right.
you can complement and work together. So,
But I think human design, so I want to thank you for that, because your help in the last 4 years with that has really influenced in a positive way our relationship. So I'm grateful that I had you on all those little conversations about, oh, that's your design. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's true. What else does it say about my design? Because
yeah.
now I
Well,
can really read it well.
yeah, and speaking of your design, Katie, I want to talk about one, we mentioned you're a generator, right? And so a generator has the potential to build a lot of wisdom in her body, especially as an emotional generator. A lot of wisdom and awareness of her body. And something that you use with your clients is called somatics. And
Yeah.
I know you've taken me through some somatic exercises before that have really helped me unlock and release some energy and just move past whatever I was really holding on to at the time. But could you talk a little bit about somatics, what it is, how you got into it, and how you use it with your clients?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you and I have these little relationships, and then we'll like learn a new modality and we'll be like, "Can I practice with you?" And I
Yeah.
I think that's always fun when you have a friend that's into interesting stuff. Well, like you probably experienced human design and then you're like, "This is blowing my mind." I had started to experience somatics, oh gosh, like over 10 to 15 years ago. But here I have to admit, I am someone who every few years forgets I have a body. Like I just forget. I will get so involved in like a work project, or maybe I'm like going through something like traumatic and then like I dissociate. And so I've noticed, as a generality, as being a highly sensitive person and being an empath, I kind of toggle in and out of my body a lot. And when I'm in it, I'm really in it. Like I know I was really in it at a time when I had to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but I had to train for like, 7 months to like climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So I was really in my body at that time. But then like I kind of like got out of my body when I was doing my PhD, because I was like so in my head, and that was all I needed. I didn't need to be in my body, like want my fingers to type, but like it was just, I was so in my head that I kind of like disconnected from my body, and like I could make it move and I could swim and stuff, but I wasn't really in it. And then I got back in it again after the PhD because I felt so disconnected and felt so almost like floating through life. I was in the third eye, maybe in the throat chakra a little bit. And I started that's where I first learned somatics. And another word for somatics is embodiment practices. And so I joined a women's embodiment circle, and it blew my mind. Like I had never experienced embodiment from the perspective of, so where do you feel anger? And I'm like, I don't know, like everywhere. And they're like, no, you feel anger in a certain place. Like, bring up anger. Where do you feel it? And then you're like, my face? You like don't even like trust yourself. You're like joking with yourself of like, oh, my shoulders, like, but the longer you have someone guide you through like your emotions and your thoughts are reflected in your body. So where are they showing up? And then you start to recognize these little patterns of like, oh, when I'm feeling very stressed, I have an extremely sore neck because I'm clenching my jaw because I'm not able to speak, or I'm like bracing for something. And so I'm clenching my jaw, and that'll show up in my neck and shoulders. And of course, we know pain is from stress, but there's a specific kind of pain that's from a specific emotion, right? And so in these feminine embodiment circles, I was not only learning like where my emotions were, but I was learning how to become more fully in my body just from a presence perspective. Because I think like sometimes when things get hard, we just leave. Like there's some of us that can just leave our bodies. And I think I learned a lot later on in life that it's a dissociative trauma response, right? Where I had some trauma from childhood that was in my body and I left. I was like, see ya. Like, I don't want to have this memory. So my soul just left. And so I have that ability, and a lot of trauma survivors will describe this. And we know because we work with trauma survivors in hypnotherapy, they will say, I left my body. I don't have any memories of where it is, but the body itself remembers. And so what happened to me in 2022 and 2023 is I started getting a lot of implicit memories. And so we know that term as hypnotherapists because an explicit memory is like someone could consciously be like, yeah, when I was a kid, this happened and it made me feel like this. And, it's very easy for them to describe. But an implicit memory is you don't have a little video memory, but your body will show signs of a memory being there. And so a lot of trauma survivors have this. For example, the one of the implicit memories that I had was this is like not connected to my childhood trauma per se, but it's like a really good example of one, is I would go to this exercise place and it had like a big like workout machine. But like every time I would go by it, like my hands would start to sweat and my face would get flush and I would be like and I would feel this implicit, like basically post-traumatic adaptation, right? And I'm like, what is this memory? I have no memory of what this is. And so I went into self-hypnosis and I pulled up what is the origin of this implicit memory. And it was when I was 17, I was in track and I had lost a race. And we were all in the weight room the next day for practice, the machine that I was so, worried about. And my coach publicly humiliated me for losing the race. And then I was so upset. Of course, he humiliated me. I'm sweating. My face is flushed. I quit the team. And so I had never really processed that memory. But then
Mhm.
here it is, like coming up years later and through an implicit memory, right? And so I was able to process it and kind of like later learn to work it out. So I'm taking a really long way to get to the fact that I go in and out of my body. But I think when we come from a background of trauma or a background of being highly sensitive or an empath, you're not as necessarily within your body. And there's a lot of reasons for that that we can go into if you want. But like we're not really in our bodies as much as some people are because we're in those top three chakras of the heart, the throat, and the third eye more as an empath. Whereas maybe if you're less empathic, you're in the lower chakras of the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. And those are more body oriented. And so it's very common for us as empaths to not even feel like we have a body. And one of my favorite things to ask clients when they're like, I don't know if I'm in my body or not is like, do you bump into walls a lot? And I'm like, all the time, because we don't know where our body ends. Yes, yes.
Guilty.
Mhm. Because empaths and highly sensitive people have poor proprioception, which means we don't know where we exist in time and space. And we have a hard time saying, like, I'm moving my right hand up. Like, it takes us, like, we actually have to think about that.
Mhm.
And so I learned to use somatics and I use embodiment practices first and foremost to heal. So when I was healing this trauma of remembering some childhood trauma that had come up in some hypnotherapy sessions and had come up in some, coaching and talk therapy sessions, I used somatic exercises to move the memories out of my body. And so, like a lot of the things that we feel are just stress or anxiety, they're actually like stuck in the fascia, and stuck in the organs, and stuck in the muscles of our body. And these intuitive somatic movements that we find when we're trying to like let those emotions out, those can help heal something that no one else can, like no acupuncturist, no, talk therapist. And it's the only thing that has helped me is this somatics. And I'll just
And
say
is it
one
true,
more. Yeah.
Katie? It's not always a implicit memory that's coming forward or a
No.
memory that you're now aware of. Sometimes it's just the physical manifestation of some type of discomfort in the body too, right? Like
Yes.
one time you worked with me on my neck, and I remember what came up was actually that emotion behind my neck pain. And then after that, once we identified that, then the memories came forward and surfaced, and we were able to move the energy along. Is that true?
Yeah, and I think too, for us, like you and I are very aware of our emotions and are aware of our memories. And I think a lot of our clients are pretty in touch with that stuff. And so it comes quickly and naturally, and it's very like intersected as it's happening. But some people, you don't even have to know what it's about. You just have to
Right.
move it. Right. And I
Yes.
think that the moving and the touching, like, because there's a lot of touch that you can do for yourself that really helps as well. That that just releases this emotions that are stuck in our body. And I think once we realize, oh my gosh, emotions get stuck in our body, instead of letting them get stuck for like years or even months, we can get them out a lot quicker. And that's what I was going towards this month and well, not this month, but the last few months when I lost the house in the hurricane. And so I'm one of these nice, hurricane survivors that lost everything. It was so much chaos and so much like crises and anxiety and stress that like I was doing this work daily, like hourly, of like, oh my gosh, I just had something really crazy happen. I gotta shake, I gotta get it out, I gotta get it out. And it's like that, maybe we wouldn't have done that a few years ago if I hadn't known about somatics. And then that stays in your body. And then it comes about back like 6 months later, and you're like having a breakdown. Everybody's like, what is wrong? I thought you were feeling better. But it's not even from that moment. It's from 6 months ago that you hadn't processed yet. But I'll
Mhm.
just pause here because I know that's like I'm just
I'm just
going all
reminded
over the
of the
place.
book. I'm reminded of the book, The Body Keeps Score.
Right.
Um, and how exactly like you said, our body retains emotions, it retains memories. And like you said, something can trigger some type of reaction. You don't know what it is. Maybe it was stored from 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 60 years ago. But with
Yes.
somatics, you're saying you're really able to move it and release it. So how do you find yourself now having worked with somatics, and what are the benefits you're seeing in your clients?
One thing I recognize with my clients that is similar to me, and like we were talking before, like you and me always get the client that is working on the thing that we either just worked on or that we're currently working on because it's just
It's
that
a 3-5
frequency.
thing as well. Yeah, third line thing.
I love it when I get a client that's like, I'm working on this. I'm like, go on. So am I.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
where you at with that? But I think that is the frequency, right? You're sending it out, and we'll nerd out on this in another episode of these chats because we're going to nerd out on something else that's like a frequency thing. But um, when I am working on something, it seems I get the clients that are working on that too. And a lot of what I have from clients recently is a sensation of being not enough. It's that is such a complex feeling, isn't it? Because it's like a little bit of shame and a little bit of guilt and a little bit of embarrassment and a little bit of pride and a little bit of like, you're just all tied together. And all of those live in different places on the body. And because they're so spread out, that feels like anxiety, right? Because it's a whole bunch of different feelings that are in different spots. And like it also can kind of make you mimic like an anxiety attack when they're all like triggered at once. And so what we can do is like combine hypno with somatics and try to find the origin of when those first kind of attached. And
Mhm.
so that's really helpful. And then in the session or after the session, we find how to move that to get it out. Now, I will say, one thing I've recognized is when things are stuck in the fascia and the muscles, if they originally got stuck in a linear thing, like maybe, you always every day was like picking up the kid the same way, or like you're playing a sport the same way, or like something happened where you're just like doing it linearly, you can't undo it linearly. You have to undo it
Mm.
non-linearly. You have to like get real weird with it and like move in a way that like doesn't look normal, and like I kind of get into the opposite and try to find these little funny little ways to open it up. And everybody always was like, "Oh, I look so weird doing this." And it's like, yeah, that's the point. It's okay if you do it alone somewhere, but it's usually, like in our hips, like, well, we have so much stored emotions in our hips, and it's like I think you and I were chatting the other day about like, yeah, they always say like you get depressed when you stop dancing. Well, what do you use when you dance? Your hips. You're just moving your hips
Mhm.
like back and forth, and that's where our emotions are. And so it's like just moving it in a funny, unique way, non-linear, goofy, like up and down, all around, side to side way. It like releases it. And a lot of these sensations of like not being good enough or not, having shame about life, things you've done in the past, like they get released. And almost everybody cries. I think that was a surprise for me. I thought I was the only one that was going to cry all the time when I was learning it. And I was like, I'm just an emotional person, so I cry a lot when I do my exercises. And I thought that was rare. It's not. It's part of the process. Is a lot of release, and it brings emotions out. And a lot of times we don't know what we're crying about, but it just helps with the process to like get it all out.
Yes. And that's cool. Even just a side note, even from a human design perspective, crying, it's release of water, and water is cellular memory coming out. And so it's releasing the cellular memory, it's releasing that energy through the tears. And so that's why anytime I'm crying, I'm like, I'm letting it out. And I tell my kids too, I'm just like, let it out. Like it's so
Yes.
healthy to cry.
Totally, right? And I love how like when we talk about these things, like we see it from the different lenses, like, yeah, of
Oh
course you
yeah.
have to cry, you have to let it out. Otherwise it's all repressed,
Mhm.
suppressed, repressed, and then that just becomes, dis-ease and chronic pain and chronic disease. So it's a very helpful method that I like to use now with my clients because, you and me, we could live all day in the ethers in this like hypno world, but I had found that I was spending too much time up there. And I would, like, we talked one day, like, I was like coming home from a session and I didn't ground enough. And I almost like crashed my bicycle because I wasn't in my body. And so I think recognizing for me, even of like being a hypnotherapist and being a coach, like when you're in your mind all day, you don't feel human. You feel like whatever the hell that being is up in this other realm, guiding someone in this ether realm. But then if you don't get back into your body, you can't really fully exist in this reality. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was like a good way of reminding myself, no, you're a human meat sack too.
Yeah. And so for those people that are listening and thinking, wow, that's me too, how can you help them get in their body? What type of method do you use? What does that look like to help get a client back in their body?
Yeah, so similar to you, like I have one-on-one sessions in person and online, but I'm also making a video series right now called The Embodied Empath because I wanted to be able to just give a product to people that are like, I want to play with this, but I'm not ready to have a one-on-one person guide me through this yet. There's always you're either one or the other. Actually, you tell me, who in human design is more likely to want to do it on their own and not have an authority figure walk them through it? And who is more likely, like, can you just hold my hand and make sure I'm doing this correctly? Who's who of the human design people?
Oh man, I mean, that would very much have to do with independent designs, but certainly any manifester would probably want a hands-off approach. Like, I got it.
Yeah,
Unless
I can
I
figure it out.
invite you. I'd say a lot of generators are happy to partner and kind of figure things out together and figure it out in a group or with another person. And projectors can be a toss-up.
Yeah, so this is like, yeah, that's what I've got. And I usually combine it with some hypnotherapy as well, because everybody will come in and
Yeah.
they're like, I have this thing and I just want to get to the origin of it. And once we get to the origin of it, you can release it through energy, but you can really release it through the body. So it's a fun one. then
Yeah.
yeah, this has been good. I'm glad we talked about both of our other modalities that we specialize in. We always have a lot of other random tools and techniques that we use, but you and me, those are some that we don't share. That
Yeah.
I do more somatics and you do more human design.
Absolutely. And it was so fun to talk with you, Katie, and I look forward to the next one.
Yay, very good. All right, for everybody listening, I'll try to put in the little comments our contact info if you want more information about either of those modalities. But thank you for joining us on this little chit chat, and we'll see you next time. Take care.